The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone and welcome to the iSpring Solutions webinar series, where every week we talk about e-learning trends, share iSpring tips and tricks, and cover clients' cases. My name is Paulina, I'm the community manager at iSpring, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. And today we will be talking about effective microlearning in record time with PowerPoint and iSpring. And as a presenter, I have invited one of your favorite speakers, Richard Goring from Bright Carbon. Hi, Richard. How are you doing today?
Very well, Paulina. How are you and how is everybody else doing today?
I'm good, thanks for asking. And we have chatted a little bit before the webinar started, and we have really global audience today from all over the world. So thank you very much, guys, for coming. We hope you will love this webinar. And at this moment, I would like to mention that this session's being recorded. So guys, no worries, you'll receive a link to replay sometime after the webinar. However, I'd like to encourage you to stay till the very end because it's a wonderful opportunity to address your questions directly to our presenter. And to do so, please submit them in the question box, which you will find on the right side of the GoToWebinar panel at the bottom. And also I have my other colleague, Paul Bender from Support Department, helping us with any questions that are iSpring related coming in the chat during the session. So guys, please keep those questions coming. We will definitely get back to you with an answer as soon as possible. Okay, I think right now we're ready to begin. So Richard, let me pass the mic over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Paulina. And hi, everybody. Welcome to the session today. What we're going to be doing is looking at how you can create microlearning using PowerPoint and iSpring. So just to check, can everybody now see my PowerPoint screen?
I can see your screen. Yep.
Perfect. Let's get going then. So what I wanted to do is really, first of all, look at the fact that when it comes to your learning experiences, do you ever feel like you're just sitting in an office, clicking away for hours and hours to get through all of the required content? I mean, most online training courses feel like that, and it just simply doesn't work. What you really need is content that's tailored to each of your learners, giving them the specific content that they need when they need it. And whether that's when they're using the latest machine or whether they are going to be in customer environments, perhaps interacting with clients in a sales environment maybe, to get them to fall in love with your offering, or it might be figuring out a new technique to create their next masterpiece, or it could even be how to play safe when you're invited to the local axe throwing club. There are loads of different things that you could be training people on, but the one thing that's common across all of them is the need to give people relevant content just when they need it. And so microlearning is this great tool for those kinds of situations. Now, I don't want to go into today into the theory of microlearning and the best practices for the structures and the types of ways that you deliver it to people, because there are loads of things out there, and I suspect a lot of you know all of that already. What I want to look at is instead, how can you actually create microlearning? Because a lot of the times when people are trying to do it, it just takes an absolute age, and it shouldn't. It should be something that you can also create reasonably quickly. And so let's look at some tips and tricks and practical demonstrations of different tools that you can use. And of course, what I'm primarily going to be looking at is PowerPoint and iSpring. So different tools that you can use to create things. And the first thing that I want to look at is the use of screen captures, because simply taking screenshots of things is actually a really useful way to be able to deliver, for example, software training. Now, if you're using Windows machine, this is super easy. All you need to do is press the Windows key, Shift and S, and that will then take a screenshot of your screen. And so then you can insert a screen recording very easily indeed. So I can do Windows Shift and S and it will take a screenshot. But you can also use iSpring, for example, and you can now start to record other bits and pieces as well, including here, for example, screen recording. Now, if you have PowerPoint 2013 or later, you can also do this in PowerPoint. So here I've got the ability in the iSpring Suite tab to do screen recording, and that gives you all sorts of wonderful options. But you can also just straight in PowerPoint do Insert, Screen Recording, And here, for example, I can click on that. It will give me the ability to choose any screen I want, so a section of it like that. So you can see my desktop here at the moment. I can just record a selection of it, or I can drag it down to record the entire screen, and that will now bring up the ability to, if I press record, now give me a 3-second countdown, and I'll then be able to record something. So this is now recording not only my screen and my cursor, and I could, for example, draw something on here, and I can draw something on there, so you can see all of this in action, but it's also recording the voiceover that's coming through my headset. If I then do Windows Shift and Q, that will then save that screen recording as a video, and you can now position that any way you want, either to make it full screen, or you can put it on top of a monitor like that, for example, if you want to, and that now plays through perfectly with all of the audio in it. You can also change the audio levels as you can with any other video piece there, and you can see all of that in action. So it's a really super easy way to be able to insert a screen capture, a screen recording, to do software training, demos, things like that. And if you've not got it quite right, then actually you also have the ability, once you've got a video in PowerPoint, to go to the playback tab on the ribbon up here on the top right, and over on the left you can trim the video. So you can now do some minor basic video editing if you want to. So you can change when it starts, you can change when it finishes, and so you can crop it down just to a small portion of it. And so now this becomes just a 7-second video instead of 11. So I've got those kind of couple of different options there, and there are other things that you can do with it, but creating a screen capture or a screen recording is a really neat way of being able to bring your content to life really very quickly. Speaking of bringing things to life, one of the things that I think is actually really interesting in PowerPoint is a new function that's only available to Office 365 subscribers. So I do apologize if you don't have this version of PowerPoint or Office yet, but Microsoft is pretty aggressively pushing it, and so I suspect you will have it in the very near future. And a new feature that was launched last year, I think, was something called morph. Now, morph is a new type of transition in PowerPoint. What it does is, if I bring up the thumbnail view here of the slides, I've got one slide, slide 12, which is this one, and I've got another slide, slide 13, which is exactly the same, except I've got this blue box on the right-hand side of slide 13 and on the left-hand side of slide 12. It's exactly the same box. I've simply copied it from one slide, pasted it onto another, and then just moved it across like that. And if I were in regular slideshow mode, when I go from slide 12 to slide 13, it would just jump just like that view there. However, if on slide 13, I go to the Transitions tab on the ribbon, then I've got this new option here, second in from the left-hand side, called Morph. And what Morph does is it recognizes that this blue square is the same object on both sides and says, well, why don't we just seamlessly move it so that it goes from here to here? So if I open up the animation pane, you'll see on slide 13, there is no animation. On slide 12, there's no animation. But if I go into slideshow view, I've got one slide here, and then I click, and it seamlessly moves to the next slide. And so it's a really neat and easy way to start to bring your content to life without having to have complex animation. Another example is it's not just about moving, but here, for example, I have a small green circle in the top left-hand corner on one slide. And now if I click onto another slide, this circle is going to move, but also change color and increase in size. And so here you've got these two slides, slide 1, slide 2, and PowerPoint is automatically doing that transition, simply using the morph transition. So it's a really neat way of bringing things to life. Now, of course, that's not necessarily terribly useful just to have little individual elements move around, but now let's imagine a real microlearning environment. Say you have a infographic, for example, maybe something like this, which is teaching people, in this case, the new starter process and the different elements that you would go through. Now, most microlearning is probably going to be accessed on a tablet or a mobile device, and so the screen is going to be pretty small. You could, of course, pinch to zoom, but then you have no control over where people are going to be looking. And so delivering something like this can be problematic. But imagine that you've got this and it's been a PDF, for instance. You can insert that into PowerPoint on one slide and then just zoom into it on a second slide, and you would then get this effect, where you zoom into one portion of it. And then you can simply click through and you can pan across all the different elements one slide at a time. So they're all coming in rather nicely and rather neatly before you can go through to the final stage. And then if you want to, click again and it brings it all back once again to the overall. And particularly if you've got narration over the top of any of these things, that works really very nicely. Now, the idea of using infographics as part of microlearning is terrific, because infographics are a great way to be able to communicate a lot of information, often very complex information, in an easy to understand and elegant way. The problem is, what I've just described to you is only available in Office 365 in PowerPoint. And so if you don't have that subscription, then that can be problematic. Sharing it to a mobile device can also be perhaps a little bit tricky because you've got to send a PowerPoint file. Wouldn't it be amazing if you can do all of that using just the web? Well, you can. And this is one of the things that I think is the most fantastic feature of iSpring, which is all of that morph functionality, that transition between multiple slides, will be available if you use the iSpring suite to publish your PowerPoint slide to HTML5. So on the iSpring Suite tab here, I can do publish, and that will now bring up the iSpring window, which allows me to publish. Now, there are lots of different tools that you can use here. You can choose the kind of output that you want. You can do video if you want to rather than HTML5, so a lot of different options. If you wanted to publish this to an LMS as well, you've got the LMS tab down here, and you can choose all sorts of different options there, including different SCORM levels or your LMS profile. But simply put, all you would need to do is choose just to publish as an HTML5 file. You can choose whatever element you want to, kind of where it's going to be. Lots of different options there for you to choose from, but it works really seamlessly for your users then if you then press publish, and this will then be an HTML5 file that you can access on your local intranet, on your LMS, on a website, and it works fantastically to be able to give people that control of clicking through content or accessing content with all of your transitions, including morph, all of your animations, and any narration and video that you put in there as well. If you do nothing else, and of course you'll want to do a lot more, but that is just phenomenal to be able to bring all of these things to life. Now, the idea of using morph to be able to move around complex content is certainly one that I would recommend. It works very nicely to be able to break that down into bite-sized chunks. But there are some other interesting trick things that you can do with morph that can bring your content to life even more. One thing is to create a magnifying lens effect. So let me choose to insert a picture for a moment. I'll choose the Bright Carbon website, which I highly recommend you all check out for all your presentation related needs and services. Sorry, shameless plug, but I can never resist. Okay, so here's the Bright Carbon website. And just for instance, I've got this diagram taking you from boring presentations where everyone is asleep up to fantastic visual dynamic presentations where everyone is engaged. And if I wanted to highlight the journey that this audience is going on, one of the things that I can do is I'm going to copy that image. So I've got two of them, and I'm going to line them up on top of each other. Then I'm going to select the top image and crop it down using the crop tools and these little grab handles here, just very roughly to focus down on the audience there. Now, of course, because I've cropped one image on top of the other, you can't see it. So let's just go to the picture effects, maybe add in a shadow on the outside so you can see that lens effect there. And I tell you what, let's make it crop to a shape. So I'm going to crop to a circle and just make it nice and neat. I'm going to crop to a 1:1 aspect ratio. Okay, so that's pretty good. That's giving me a focus on my audience. But if you are really clever here, what you would do is you would increase the size of it a bit, like that. And now it gives me the impression that I've kind of zoomed in on that portion of the audience. Now what I want to do is duplicate the slide. So using Control D, so I've got two slides that are the same. And on my second slide here, I'm going to move this across so that it now covers the happy audience on the right. Then I'm going to choose to crop that image and just move the image frame within that crop mask there, like that. And now what I've done is I've got a zoomed in version of the happy audience with a touch of the unicorn there in the background. And so as you can see, I've got one slide and two slides with the two different zoom lenses on either side. If I then go to the Transitions tab and choose Morph, what happens is I go from one slide here, and then I click, and it gives me that pan effect across the entire diagram. And you can do that back and forth and back and forth. And it's a really neat way to be able to pan across a complex diagram and show a magnification type approach. And it's not just a magnification like that. You could, for example, play around with the blur effects on an image in PowerPoint. So this is an image vaguely of a book that's been blurred out, and then we've used that same technique with some glasses around it to then bring that into focus. So you can take it from blurred on one slide into focus on another slide, and that technique can be used really effectively to be able to bring your content to life, make it much more engaging and dynamic as you're delivering it to people. And of course, that's important because in a micro-learning world, you need to be able to capture people's attention, especially if it's going to be on a small device so that people are engaged with it all the way through. And if you want those slides, for example, as well, you can download them from the handouts that Paulina has got for you, but also you can go to the Bright Carbon website and just do a search for Morph, and we've got a series of blog articles there with these examples and a couple more with step-by-step guides of how to do them as well. All right, so that I think can work really very nicely to be able to bring things to life. But now let's look at that idea of creating the infographics in the first place, because sometimes that can be problematic. So where can you get inspiration for creating infographics? And I hate to say it, but I think this kind of slide here would, of course, obviously be terrible, but you can improve it using a function in PowerPoint called SmartArt. Now, I suspect a lot of you know SmartArt, and you probably know that it's pretty terrible. And you'd be right, it is pretty terrible. But you can go to the Insert tab on the ribbon in PowerPoint, choose SmartArt over here in the middle of that Insert tab, and here you have a variety of different layouts that you can choose from. Now, to be honest, most of these are pretty poor, but there are some which can really enhance your audience's ability to understand content. So for example, this text and bullet points here is talking about how you generate Bitcoin. And it's kind of a process. So you've got miners joining the network, and then you're creating blocks, and then the time decreases, and all the way down to this. And then actually, because of that, because the time is normal, then more miners join the network again. So it's actually a cyclical process. So knowing that, why don't I turn it into a cycle? So with this, because I've already got the bullet points there created, I can go to the Home tab on the ribbon, and you can simply use this button in the middle of the Home tab called Convert to SmartArt. Here it brings up some lists of different SmartArt elements, but if I choose there, Basic Cycle, it automatically creates a basic cycle for me using the bullet points that I had. And so I think SmartArt is a really interesting way to look at how you would present information, how you would present data, and potentially start to create infographic type elements using that as a basis or that as inspiration. And of course, it could be that you combine several SmartArt elements together to be able to create that. And that, on the face of it, is fine. It's a good static diagram. You can add some animation to it as well if you want to, simply by going to the Animations pane on the ribbon. You can choose to add an animation. So I'm just going to choose a simple zoom, for instance, nothing too distracting, but a simple entrance animation like zoom. And you can also choose, rather than it coming up all in one go, using the effect options just to the left of the add animation button here, you can choose to have the object animate either all at once or one by one. And if you do that, now it's going to animate piece by piece, and that can all be controlled by clicks as well. So you can pace the flow of information or time it to match any narration that you have. But it's still a bit passive. So it requires the audience to just sit there and listen. So really boosting that, you've got another option with iSpring to be able to take those kind of SmartArt graphics and make them now truly interactive. So here's one that I made earlier. I can simply go to the iSpring Suite tab, choose Interaction, and it brings up the iSpring Suite here. Now you've got the ability to add in lots of different SmartArt-like graphics, but with iSpring, they're now interactive. So here I've chosen a pyramid graphic, which is the food pyramid. So we've got kind of fats and sugars at the top, you've got dairy, you've got meats, you've got grains, and apparently we need to now add a layer. So I can add a layer using the functions here like that. That's going to add in number 5, and this is going to be fruit and veg. We can add in a description, let's say something like that. You can also change the color. So, this is red. We don't want that. You can maybe make it kind of in line with all the others. So it's a nice, neat yellow color. Or maybe you want to make it green because, it's fruits and veg, whatever you want to do. Let's stick with the yellow, I think, for now. You've got all sorts of different options to be able to change things around. You can add in extra elements. But to be honest, at their core, this is about creating microlearning very quickly. Just using the base elements there, I think, is really good. And then I can do a preview of it to bring that up, and that will then show you how, as a viewer, what you would see is this, and you can now either choose next if you want to, but also then just click on any of these elements, jump around them in any order you want, and it will show you the relevant content. So it becomes a really neat and easy way to be able to access content, but also make your content more engaging and interactive for your users. So something that I would recommend to be able to mix up microlearning pieces, but also mean that they're not kind of passively engaging and forcing people to go down one particular route. People can choose what they want, and it's going to be more appropriate for them. So that works really nicely to be able to create interactive content, and I would recommend that you check it out. Speaking of interactive content, though, there are other things that you can do in PowerPoint. Now, these can sometimes take a little bit more time, but might well be worth it. So one of the functions that you have in PowerPoint is something called trigger animations. Now, these are regular standard animations, but instead of just clicking normally, you will trigger them by clicking another object on the slide. So here, for example, I've got a slide which is talking about developing and maintaining technology and how that's really important to be successful. There are 3 different aspects to this, and I don't know until I ask you or until you tell me which of these 3 aspects are really important to you. And I don't want to bore you unnecessarily by making you go through all 3. And so what I've done is used trigger animations to be triggered by each of these 3 icons. So if you're really interested in scale, you can simply click on the scale button, and that will then bring up the relevant content. If you want to know about security, absolutely, that's critical. Let's click on that, and it brings up the relevant bits. But you don't care about continuity, no problem. We can click on to the next slide. But if you are interested in continuity, no problem as well. You can click on that, and you can bring up the relevant pieces. So this is all designed to make sure that you're feeding just the right information to people as they need it, rather than forcing them to go through everything, which is what traditional training typically does. Now, the way that this works is very simple. So here, for example, I have, again, the Bright Carbon website. Check it out, it's really cool, all of that kind of shameless pluggy stuff. But I've also got here a list of all of the services that we offer, which most of you won't really care about. But it's probably pertinent for me to have it available if somebody asks the question. So it's perfectly valid for me to say, here's the Bright Carbon website, check it out, because there's loads of really cool free stuff. There's lots of resources and tutorials and things for you to pick up on. But I don't want to bore you unnecessarily with a shameless sales plug, for example. And so what I would typically do is go to the Animations tab on the ribbon, choose to add an animation, and in this case, I'm going to choose one called Peek In, just because I like the effect that it has. And that gives the impression of this services image sliding out from the website. Regular show mode, if I put that up, there we are. I've just got the screenshot there, which is terrific. But now if I click, that comes up automatically. So of course that is annoying. If you go to the Animations tab on the ribbon though, and choose Animation Pane, just on the right-hand side here, just next to the Add Animation button, that brings up this window, which shows you a list of all of the animations currently on the slide. And you can see here the one animation that I added in. If you right-click on that and choose Timing from the pop-up menu, what you'll see is a whole lot of options about how long it lasts and when it starts, which you can largely ignore because that's fine. But also you've got this option down at the bottom here, this drop down called Triggers. And if you click on that, you can animate this object as part of the click sequence, which just means a normal everyday animation, or you can start the effect when you click on another object on the slide. And then you open up this drop down and you see all of the different objects that are on the slide. So I can now choose the Bright Carbon website and then choose OK. And now I get a new area on the animation pane, which is this trigger. And so if I were to put this into show mode now, I've got my regular screenshot there. If that's all you're interested in, great, let's click and move on to the next slide. But if someone says, oh no, what do you guys do? Ah, well, it's interesting that you ask. I can now move my cursor over to the website. You see I've got the little pointing hand active content icon now as my cursor. Click on that and it then brings up this content. And you can take that further. So I've got one trigger there to bring in the object, but I can also choose to add an animation to get rid of it. So I can choose an exit animation. We'll just do a peek out again, the same. And you can do the same thing. You can right click and you can choose timing and triggers. Or if you want this exit animation to be triggered by clicking on the same object, well, this has already been set as a trigger object. So I can simply drag it down into that. And so now this object, this screenshot, becomes the trigger for both of these animations. And because both of them are on clicks, what that essentially gives you is a toggle switch. So I can now click on the screenshot to bring this up and then click again to get rid of it. And then the cycle resets, so I can click it in and then click it out. And so you can do that as much as you like, clicking on this to bring the object in and bring it out before you finally then move on. And it's not just about entrance and exit animations, there's all sorts of animations that you could potentially do. So here's an example of one of the slides that we've produced for one of our clients, and there's a general kind of microlearning type bit just to give you some insight into the simplicity of this new system and kind of what it does. We've actually got hyperlinks down at the bottom here to go to different modules if you want to, but once you've had a minute or so of intro to it and a bit of explanation, there were a couple of other slides as well, you then pause and say, okay, well, based on all of what you've just seen, what do you think people would actually want from this product set? And so here we've got all of these objects triggering not entrance or exit animations, but color change animations. So if I click on easy setup, for example, that triggers itself to turn green. If I choose A3 wide format, that triggers itself to turn red. And so you have this ability to create interactive content vaguely using trigger animations in PowerPoint. And again, if you publish this to HTML5 through iSpring, all of that functionality will be preserved. So then you have little mini web pages and microsites or modules in your LMS for people to be able to access all of this functionality really very easily. All right, that's kind of good, but it's still somewhat limiting. There are limits to what you can do with triggers, and it's also a little bit of a pain sometimes. And so again, this is where you can really enhance your interactive learning and your microlearning using iSpring by adding in, not this time an interaction, although of course that would work too, but also now a quiz. So if I were to go to quiz, and again, this is one that I've prepared earlier, you can add in lots of different types of quiz content. These are things where you can provide feedback to your audience, but you can also grade things as well. So if you want to pick up on scores, you can do. So this is the quiz maker. And so here you can see I've got my slide layout. So I've got an image in the background of the water cycle. I've got individual boxes here, and I've also got other boxes, and this is going to form the basis of a drag and drop. So I've added in a drag and drop quiz. I've added in those different elements nice and easily. And then you can just very simply go to the form view here, and you can choose what the drag item is and what the drop target is and what the correct matches are. So just to show you, let's add in the final one here. I'm going to choose to add in precipitation. It will then give you a thumbnail view on the bottom right-hand corner of where you're going to match it to. So my final object was precipitation, and I'm now going to match it to the one on the top right-hand corner, imaginatively called round rectangle 11. Now that I've done that, I can then preview this. You've got all sorts of other options as well about when you're getting feedback and how you can score things as well. So lots of different things that you can do. But with microlearning, simplicity is really key. So you can just do it nice and quickly and simply. You might not need to do anything else. But now people are going to come across this, and you can simply do a drag and drop, do like that. And it's just a really neat way to be able to engage with people very easily. using a tool that takes a minute or two to create in its base form, and certainly no more than about 10 or 15 minutes or so in the most complicated way you could imagine it. So lots of different options there that you can potentially build on, and I would recommend that you check out the Quizmaker functionality in iSpring as well for these different tools to bring your content to life. Okay, I'm going to pause there just for a moment because we are pretty much halfway and I realize that we've gone through a lot. Polina, are there any questions that have come through that it would be good to answer now, or should I move on and continue?
There is one question that I would like to talk about right now from Melinda. Interested how you'd inform your learners that something is interactive and they can click.
So there are a couple of options. I mean, I think with this layout here, just the fact that there are blanks kind of suggests, I mean, actually the default, if you open up a quiz, is that there is a box here that says click and drag these objects, but I removed that just because it felt unnecessary. This kind of interface is probably useful. On something like this though, if you needed it to, what we've got here is extra little bits here. So these little circles that kind of come around suggesting that they're clickable. Or sometimes you've got the active pointing hand icon there. We actually make that into a little icon and you would maybe have it just there, which again suggests that that button is now clickable, or a little mouse icon perhaps, or something else that makes it stand out. So if you've got a very light colored slide like I've got here, having solid colors like that would again indicate that this is something that's clickable. Or if you absolutely need to, you can have a little key maybe at the bottom just with an idea of what the icon looks like. So a little, cursor perhaps, or a little clickable active hand to say, click here for interactive content maybe. Maybe that's what you would need to do if this is the first couple of times you're sending it out to people, but I suspect very quickly people would learn that behavior because, typically you would go to websites and people recognize where the clickable elements are. So you see those contrasting buttons, or you see little animations and stuff and things to click on. And so those are the kinds of things that I'd recommend. Also directional arrows, maybe if you wanted to click next, rather than having the next and previous player buttons, you might have a little arrow maybe on the right-hand side of the slide as if you're cycling through a carousel. And people are very familiar with that if they're doing photography. So I would hope that all of those things should be pretty quick for you to be able to do and also really intuitive for your audience. Is that okay?
Yes, sure. And regarding triggers, why did you not use the little icon in the menu for triggers rather than right-clicking and getting into the full options? Thank you.
Because the trigger options, if I just do it here, let's go to the animations tab, I've got trigger there. It doesn't, to my mind, give you as many options if you wanted to toggle things, for example. So I mean, you can do for simple triggers, that's fine, but there are more options that you've got if you go to the animation pane and right click and do timing there. So I'd prefer to show you that and the full functionality rather than a limited set of functionality in the pane there. But it's largely personal preference.
And let's cover just one more question and then get going. How did you get those circles moving?
Using a little animation, a spin animation. So for example, if we wanted to do this for the hamburger menu, I'm going to insert a shape and let's choose to insert an arc like that. Let's just do it all the way around maybe, and now we're just going to add in a gradient. Something like that perhaps would probably be good. And I tell you what, let's alter the gradient a bit so that we've got some transparency going on. So it's not perfect, but it's probably close enough to what we want. And I'm then just going to duplicate that, spin it around so we've got two of them on top of each other. So that gives you a sense of what's going on. Okay, so there I've got my little piece that I want to try to create and kind of highlight. This is the area to do. What I can now do is click to the animations tab here, add animation, and I've got here a spin animation. So it's one of the yellow emphasis animations, and that will spin an object around. Now the default is that it will just happen once, but if you choose effect options, you can change, it goes multiple spins like that, but that's too fast. What you can do instead is to right click on the animation, choose effect options from the pop-up menu. That also is a way that you can access timing as well. And here you can choose to change the amount that it spins by, including a custom amount, but you can also choose on the timing actually the duration, so how long it lasts, and also a repeat. And so I can do until end of slide, for example, and then OK, and now it's going to repeat indefinitely until I move off the slide. So I've got that there permanently. Let's change that up there like that. I'll tell you what, just for consistency so that it looks reasonable, let's add in a quick zoom entrance animation as well. Bring that up. So now this zooms in and it gives me that spinning effect. So that's where I want to click. And of course I could just have a hot button over this if I want to, but the entire thing is also hyperlinked here. So I can click there and that then brings up the content. So spin animation, nice and simple.
Thank you very much.
All good?
Yep.
Right. So I talked about the idea of being quick. If you've ever been to one of the sessions that Polina and I and iSpring have done before, I'll have probably talked about the quick access toolbar. But if you've not, you're absolutely in luck. The quick access toolbar is an absolute essential to be able to create content in PowerPoint quickly. Now, you've certainly all got it, as long as you're in PowerPoint 2007 or later. But if you've not heard of it or used it before, it'll be up in the top left-hand corner, and it's just a series of icons like save, undo, redo. So it'll be up here like that. Now, what this actually is the ability to add in any functions you use on a regular basis so that they're there in a shortcut toolbar for you. Now, I don't like it when it's up here. I think that it's too far from the slide and it increases your mouse mileage. So the first thing that I do is, so you've got the save icon here, right click on it and just choose show quick access toolbar below the ribbon. That now brings this ribbon of gray down close to your slide, and you can now add any function you use regularly to it. So for example, if you're always using the new slide button, you can simply right click and choose to add to quick access toolbar. If you've already got things on your quick access toolbar like undo, you can simply right click on that and choose remove quick access toolbar. The reason I would remove undo from your quick access toolbar is that even going to the keyboard shortcut, even going to the quick access toolbar for undo is too much. So the keyboard shortcut is Control and Z or Control and Z, and that's definitely what you should be using. Now, you could, if you wanted to, spend half an hour or so going through all the different tabs on the ribbon, finding all of the functions that you use regularly and right-clicking and choosing Add to Quick Access Toolbar. But you don't have time for that. So instead, if you right-click on anything on the ribbon, you can choose Customize Quick Access Toolbar from the pop-up menu. And that brings up this window with all of the objects that you can add in on the left and all of the objects that you've currently got in your quick access toolbar on the right. Now, it doesn't look like there are very many things here on the left, and that's because there aren't. But there is, almost hidden away at the top here, a drop down that says popular commands, which is laughable because none of these are popular. But if you click on that, you can now choose all commands, and now you have several thousand functions that you can choose from. Now, rather than spend 2 or 3 hours doing this, which you probably don't want to do either, unless you've got a bottle of gin and it's a Friday morning, you can go to the Import Export button on the bottom right-hand corner and there choose to import a customization file. And that means that if somebody else has created a quick access toolbar, they can export theirs and share it with you. And if you want, you can access the same quick access toolbar that I've got here that we all use at Bright Carbon by going to brightcarbon.com and doing a search for quick access toolbar. And there you'll find a short 2-minute tutorial covering what I've just done, but also showing you, giving you a download for this quick access toolbar, which is what we all use at Bright Carbon. Now, this is all completely for free. It's all also completely standard. So even the strictest IT policies in the world will allow you to do it because it's not actually changing anything, it's not installing anything, it's just like opening up a PowerPoint deck. So it's a built-in function to PowerPoint, it's just customizing it. And of course, once you've done it, if there are things on this that you don't like, you don't want the animation bits here, for example, you can simply right-click on them and remove from Quick Access Toolbar. And if there are things that you want that we've missed, you can right click and you can choose to add to quick access toolbar. So once you've got that as a base, you can customize it and make it your own. And it's a really neat and easy way to be able to significantly boost your productivity in PowerPoint. So I would highly recommend that you do it. Speaking of productivity boosts, there are a couple of other things that I thought would be useful to help you to create content more quickly, particularly custom content if you're going to be creating more complex infographics that you can't use SmartArt or interactions or quizzes for. So one of the things that I think is important to recognize that is if you're copying content, so say here, for example, I wanted to create a basic process. I mean, you would use SmartArt for this anyway, but just for sake of argument, I've got this object here, and if I wanted to create a new object, I'd have to copy it using Control-C and then paste it using Control-V on the keyboard. And that pastes it just to the right and just below the original object. Why you would want to do that, I have no idea, because now you've got to move the object somewhere else. However, if you click on the object and drag it as if you're going to move it somewhere else, but press and hold the Control key at the same time, then by holding the Control key, dragging the object and then letting go of the mouse first, you'll now create a copy of the object wherever you dragged it to. So I'm going to press and hold the Control key, click on the object and drag it, and now I've created a new object over here. And even better than that, if you press and hold the Shift key, then that means that your movement is restricted to just horizontal or vertical alignment with the original shape. So I can do Control and Shift to drag once, and then Control and Shift to drag again, and Control and Shift to drag again, and in a matter of seconds, I've created a nice 4-step process. Now that's kind of all very well and good, but you can create a chevron process. But let's now imagine instead that you wanted to create something like a Gantt chart. And so I'm going to draw, say, for example, a line there like that. And now I'm going to do my copy drag using the Control and the Shift key to do it once. And rather than having to do that multiple times, once I've done it once, I can now do redo. And so the redo function is normally on your quick access toolbar, but the keyboard shortcut is Control-Y, and I do Control-Y, and it will remember that the last thing I did was do a copy drag of this line that far away from the original, and it will give me another one that far away from the one that I've just selected. And I can keep doing Control-Y to now create a nice grid like that, for example. And then maybe I can draw a rectangle there for one part of a Gantt chart, and then maybe another there like that. We'll do a third one there. Let's bring that up there. And finally, a fourth one, bringing that there to there, for example. And if you wanted to change the colors, then you absolutely could do. So let's do something like this here. Actually, let's do them, yeah, just different colors there like that. Rather neatly. Let's maybe make this one a little bit lighter, something like that there. And so now you've got this nice Gantt chart that you've created just using the copy drag functions nice and easily. So copy drag, really useful boost to be able to create quite interesting, quite useful content kind of neatly. But it all relies on kind of fairly standard shapes. So just the standard auto shapes here, and they haven't changed in decades in PowerPoint. What if you wanted to create something else? So here, for example, we got a piece that we created again for one of our clients, and this was a short little microlearning piece on the new vials that contain reagents for medical diagnostic equipment. And so it's a short little piece just doing a competitive comparison, a kind of a before and an after kind of piece, showing with the old-fashioned flat vials, you've got these complex and expensive reagents in a little bottle. They're only 5 ml, so really tiny, but they cost a lot of money and they go into blood testing machines. And so you get this pipette that comes down, and it's an automatic machine, and it aspirates up the liquid, but you're still left with about 300 microliters. Doesn't sound a lot, but actually that's a lot of waste. So then the next innovation was to tilt the vial, and if you tilt the vial, then the machine can get that bit close to the bottom, and now you're only wasting 100 microliters, but that's still potentially problematic because you're actually leaving a lot there, and you're kind of, you know, wasting quite a lot. And so the latest innovation was to get an insert, which you can just put in there, super cheap to be able to do, so it's not excessive expense because you need 5 of them, But you can add that in, and now the machine can get all the way down, and you are minimizing the amount of wastage. So that's the kind of the story there. But all of this content has been created in PowerPoint, and we've done all of this using some standard shapes, but also using a new set of tools called the Boolean tools that allow you to create completely custom content. So to show you what I mean, let's go to a slide and let's make a puzzle piece, for example. That's a good demonstration of what you could do with it. So I'm going to go to the auto shapes bit here, and I'm going to construct the building blocks of a puzzle piece. So for example, I can draw one square like that. Okay, and then I'm going to draw another square using my copy drag just to move that across there like that. So I've got the two of them. And let's just change the color of this one on the right so you can see what's going on. And then I'm going to draw a circle which is going to fit there. And again, let's just change the color of it. And I'm going to copy that circle, line these on top of each other, change the color of that one. And I'm just going to zoom into this and resize this circle so that the gap between the two circles is pretty much the same as the gap between the two squares, and also just make sure that there's a small overlap between the small gray circle and the left-hand blue square. Okay, now I've gone through that reasonably quickly, but I would hope that everyone is pretty comfortable creating two squares and two circles and arranging them like that. Now I set out to make a puzzle piece here, and you can probably figure out that actually if I were to manipulate these shapes, I could now create some puzzle pieces, and that's precisely what I want to do. If I now select the right-hand yellow square there, and then select the larger blue circle, if I could cut out this circle from the square, that would give me a puzzle piece. And so you can, in PowerPoint 2010 onwards, use something called the merge shapes or Boolean tools. If you go to the Format tab on the ribbon, over here on the left, you've got merge shapes, and that gives you the ability to manipulate the shapes relative to each other. And so if I choose this option down at the bottom called subtract, that will cut out the circle from the square, and now I'm left with one half, or one puzzle piece, one half of a pear. If I select the left-hand square and the smaller circle, go back to the Format tab, go to merge shapes on the left, I can now choose union, and that merges them together as a single shape. And because I was reasonably careful about lining all of the objects up and making sure that the gaps are all the same, I've now got this perfect pairing of two puzzle pieces together to give you the ability to create any kind of custom shape you want really very easily just using standard shapes like that. There is one additional element if you are absolutely desperate, which is in the Home tab under all the auto shapes. This thing over here on the right-hand side of lines called Freeform. It looks a bit like a squashed Pac-Man. And what that allows you to do is to create completely custom shapes. So I could do something like that, for example, but that's a little bit awkward to create. It's kind of point to point. It's not terribly easy to be able to manipulate, although you can do, and you can check out the Bright Carbon website for more resources and tutorials on that. But I think as a way to be able to create content nice and quickly, the Boolean tools are very much where it's at, these merge shape tools, because they will bring to life your content in a way that's very difficult and time consuming to create otherwise. All right, 50 minutes in, and we are pretty much there. I would like to thank everyone so much for joining in. I think that that's been tremendous. Thank you so much. Shameless plug alert for all of you. This session has obviously been brought to you today by iSpring. I really do think it's a fantastic tool for you to bring to life your content. I mean, just generally any kind of learning content and interactive content, but especially for microlearning, it's so useful to be able to create content nice and quickly. So check out iSpringSolutions.com if you aren't already a fan to see all the cool things that you can do across the entire suite. Then we can answer more questions about what's available. If you're interested, another shameless plug alert, these are all the things that Bright Carbon does, so presentations and e-learning and dynamic animations. We create all of these things custom for people. I mean, obviously, if you want to get in touch about them, please do. but also, as you can probably tell, we're quite a geeky company and we like to share. So if you are interested in any of these things, check out the website, because there you'll find lots of resources and tools and things for you to be able to pick up on. There's our own mini kind of masterclass event series as well that you can check out for more live stuff if you'd like to. Check out the handout, the slides that Polina will be able to share with you, and of course the recording from today. But if you'd like even more PowerPoint tips and tricks, then if you go to brightcarbon.com/PPT tricks, there you'll find lots of little videos, short little 2-3 minute video pieces, essentially microlearning on different topics and different techniques in PowerPoint that you might find useful. And if you go to brightcarbon.com/PPT toolkit, there you can download again for free a 20 or 30 slide PowerPoint deck with lots of different graphics and elements that you might be able to use. So with that, happy to have the next 5, 10, 15 minutes or so for questions, as long as anybody wants. If anyone would like to get in touch with me directly, it's richard.goring@brightcarbon.com or info@brightcarbon.com. And of course, check out iSpringSolutions.com for loads of really cool events and resources as well, just like this one. And of course, a fantastic product suite. So Polina, any more questions that have come in since we last spoke?
So first of all, thanks to Richard. Awesome as always, says Josie Baker, as well as a lot of other people or our attendees who came and joined us today for this session. So yes, Richard, this was a wonderful webinar. Thank you very much for being so kind and actually repeating the session that you did at the DevLearn conference live in Las Vegas. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And also, I would like to thank everybody who joined us today for this wonderful session, and we hope that you guys learned something new today. And I would like to invite you to our next webinar that's going to be held next Wednesday, I believe it is. Thursday, December 6th, and it's going to be dedicated to shedding unwanted megabytes, tips and tools for reducing media file size. So I am sharing the link to this webinar right now in the chat section. Also, I would like to share a link to Richard's presentation that he's been using today during the webinar. Sending it in the chat right now as well. Okay, so you're welcome to look at it right now. And I would also like to thank Paul for taking care of every single question that came in up until this moment. Thank you very much, Paul. You've been very, very helpful. All right, so let's see if there are any questions still left other than comments like, thank you, congratulations, was fantastic session. Very, very worthwhile. Amazing session. Thank you. Fantastic. Thank you very much, guys, by the way, for sharing.
Thank you. I should also say the link that Polina has just shared with the slides, of course, have a lot of the slides there. You can play around with them and use them. But in many of them, there are also notes in the speaker notes for more detailed instructions on some of the functions too. So if you prefer to read rather than watch, you can, of course, watch the recording of this, but also have a read of that with more instructions too.
Kimberly says, where's the link to Polina's handouts? So it's shared with you in the chat, and also I'm sharing it with you right now as well. Okay. All right, thank you, got it. So any questions, guys, you would like to ask Richard before we wrap up the webinar? So Richard, is that okay if I make the presentation available for download?
Yes, please, absolutely.
Okay, just one moment, guys. Okay, so you can download it right now. You will see the download button in the upper right corner. Okay, great. So it looks like that works. So in the PowerPoint link, where are the comments? If you download the presentation, you will find them in the comments section. Is that right, Richard?
It is, yes. But you'll also see in there, the final couple of slides have all of those links.
Mhm.
And if anybody needs anything specifically, please do feel free to get in touch. You can either contact generally info@brightcarbon.com, and I or any other members of the team are very happy to geek out with you. But also you can contact me directly, richard.goring@brightcarbon.com too. Delighted to share. If you can spare a bit of time with me, we can jump on a screen sharing and go through things.
Yep. Thank you very much. All right. So, okay. So it looks like you've covered all the questions by this point. So that's great. And I think that at this point we are ready to wrap up. So I would like to thank everyone again for joining us today. Thank you very much, guys. I know that you've been joining us from all over the world, all over the globe. So yes, I know how much it takes to actually make time for this session to be live in it. So yes, we very much appreciate it. And I would like to thank you, Richard, for being awesome as always and staying like I call you, the guru of PowerPoint, because I think that you know every single detail of it.
Thank you so much, Polina. That's delightful to work with you and Paul again. So it's wonderful. And also, I would strongly recommend to anybody who wants even more of this kind of stuff to go on the Twitter, where you can do follow @iSpring Pro and @BrightCarbon for loads of other really cool tips and tricks as well. So that's a nice little thing to be able to see. Super micro learning, and there often will have a sequence of 3 or 4 images, for example, giving you 2 or 3 nice easy steps to be able to create really cool stuff too. So that's a nice way of accessing great content.
So to everyone who's been tuning in later than planned, no worries, you will receive a recording of this presentation sometime really soon. So that should work. Okay, so I wish everyone a wonderful day, and I hope to see you at the next webinar. Bye, Richard. Bye, Paul. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.